Hi everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Peter, and I was married for 5 years to someone I thought I knew completely. When I came home and saw her standing silent, what she whispered to me changed our lives forever. This is a story of when the two people you trust most in the world have been lying to your face for months. My wife's name was Rachel. We met at a coffee shop in downtown Portland in 2018. I was 27, working in a consulting company. She was 25, just finished her nursing degree, and about to start at OHSU. Before we met, I wasn't looking for anything serious. I'd been single for about a year after a relationship that ended badly. But Rachel was different. Our first date was supposed to be dinner and a movie. We ended up talking in the restaurant parking lot until 11 p.m. about everything. She told me about losing her dad when she was 16 and how it made her want to help people. I told her about growing up with parents who fought constantly and how I promised myself I'd never let that happen in my own marriage. We were together for 2 years before I proposed. She said yes before I even finished asking. We got married in September 2020. It was a small wedding because of COVID, just immediate family and a few close friends. My best friend Adam was my best man. He'd been my roommate in college, stood by me through the bad breakup, and was there for every major moment in my adult life. Adam and Rachel got along great from day one. The three of us would go camping, play board games, and celebrate holidays together. The first 3 years of marriage were good. We bought a house. Rachel got promoted to charge nurse in the ICU. I got promoted and recognized for my devotion at work, and eventually became a senior consultant. We had our routines. I'd leave for work around 6:30 a.m. because of traffic, and she'd head to the hospital for her 7 a.m. shift. I'd usually get home around 5:30. She'd be home by 4 unless she picked up overtime. We'd cook dinner together, watch Netflix, and talk about our days. Weekends were for errands, seeing friends, and working on the house. Adam lived about 20 minutes away in SE Portland. He'd come over maybe twice a week, sometimes more if there was a situation he wished to share. I trusted them both completely. That's important for you to understand. This wasn't a marriage where I was checking her phone or wondering where she was. Rachel had never given me a reason to doubt her. Adam had been my best friend for 8 years. Looking back now, I can see things differently. But at the time, everything felt normal. There were small things that didn't register as important until later. After about 4 years of being married, Rachel started working more overtime shifts. The hospital was short-staffed, she said, which was true. I'd heard her complain about it for months. And in all this, while our intimacy suffered. She went from picking up maybe 1 extra shift a week to 2 or 3. She'd come home exhausted, sometimes after midnight. I tried to wait up for her, but I had to be at the office early. She'd say she was fine, just tired, needed to help cover for people who'd quit. Even when she was not working, she didn't create room for us to make out. And when I initiated it, she would turn it down. I got busy too. The company I worked for landed a consulting gig with a big company that had branches all over the country. We were handling reports from years ago to find out loopholes the company is experiencing. Since my wife is always busy, I decided to accept more of this job. I was working 50-hour weeks, trying to cover more ground for the company. But I observed something that I never thought was harmful to my marriage. Rachel would mention that my friend Adam stopped by when I got home from work. He'd stop by to drop something off or check on a project we were working on in the backyard. Back then, I didn't put much thought into it. When I think about it now, the more prominent changes started around Christmas. We'd hosted Adam and a few other friends for New Year's Eve. Rachel made this elaborate dinner and spent all day cooking. Adam brought wine, but I noticed that he complimented her on everything. The food, the decorations, and how nice she looked. At the time, I just thought he was being polite, but I was uncomfortable with that. As time goes on, Rachel would start wearing a different perfume, buy new underwear, join a gym, and start working out twice a week. When I mentioned it, she said she wanted to get in better shape, that seeing COVID patients over the years had made her realize how important health was. Made sense, but our intimate situation didn't get better. Instead, she became more distant, not all at once, but gradually. She started picking small fights about things that never bothered her before. Little domestic things that had never been issues. I thought it was stress from work. The pandemic had been hard on healthcare workers. I tried to be more understanding, more helpful around the house. I thought I was being a supportive husband. But in reality, what I was actually doing was making it easier for her to spend time with my best friend. One Tuesday, I left the house at 6 a.m. Rachel was still asleep. She'd worked a double shift the day before and wasn't scheduled until 3 p.m. I kissed her forehead before I left. She mumbled something and rolled over. The day was normal. I grabbed lunch at a food truck downtown, ate it standing on the sidewalk while checking emails on my phone. Around 2 p.m., I got a text from Rachel saying she hoped I was having a good day and that she loved me. I texted back that I loved her too and would be home by 6. I left the office at 5:15, hit traffic on I-84, and didn't pull into our driveway until almost 6:30. Rachel's car was there, which was unusual. She should have been at work already. I figured maybe she'd called in sick or picked up a different shift. It happens sometimes. I came through the front door like I always did, keys in the bowl on the entry table, work shoes off, calling out that I was home like I had every day for 3 years when I knew she was home. Rachel was standing in the middle of our living room, facing the door, like she'd been waiting for me. She was still in her scrubs. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, which was normal for work, but pieces had come loose around her face. She looked like she'd been crying. I asked if she was okay and mentioned that I thought she had to work today. She didn't answer right away, just looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. She finally said she called in sick, but her voice sounded hoarse. I observed her. Something was wrong. But before I could say anything, she said there was something I needed to know. The words came out barely above a whisper, but I heard them perfectly. And I knew immediately that whatever she was about to tell me was going to change everything. Your stomach knows before your brain does. You know? That sick feeling that starts in your chest and spreads outward. I felt it the second she said those words. I suggested we sit down, trying to stay calm, trying to be the supportive husband. But my heart was already racing with suggestions. Rachel walked over to the couch, but didn't sit down right away. She stood next to it, wrapping her arms around herself, like she was cold. I sat down and looked up at her, asking what was going on. She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it. Started crying, instead, while she stood there looking at me. I told her to open up to me and asked what happened, if she was hurt, and if something happened to one. She shook her head and finally sat down, but on the very edge of the couch. She said she'd done something terrible, something she couldn't take back. I reached over to touch her hand, but she pulled away slowly. I told her to just tell me. She looked down at her lap and said she'd been having an affair. For a second, I couldn't process what she'd said. I asked what she meant. She repeated that she'd been having an affair for 2 months. I stared at her. She was still looking down, still crying, but quietly now. I asked, with whom, though part of me already had suggestions. She looked up at me then and said it was with Adam, my best friend. The room went completely silent. I had suggestions in my head, but Adam wasn't one of them. He is my best friend, and I trusted him with everything. I repeated his name, not really as a question, just saying it. She confirmed it was him. I asked how long. She said for months while sobbing, asking me to forgive her. I thought about all the times he'd come over, and all the times the 3 of us had hung out together, and I'd been completely oblivious. I asked where. She held back, but when she saw I was serious, she said they did it sometimes in our house when I was at work, sometimes at his place, when she told me she was working overtime. Then she said that wasn't the worst part. I looked at her. How could there be a worse part? She started crying harder and told me he'd been recording them, videos, on his phone, and now he was threatening to show them to me, to my family, to people at her work if she tried to end it. The word that came to my head was blackmail. My best friend was blackmailing my wife to continue having an affair. I stood up from the couch. I had to move, had to do something with the energy that was building up inside me before I exploded on her. I said, speaking slowly, because I needed to make sure I understood, that she was telling me she'd been sleeping with my best friend for months, in our house, and now he was blackmailing her to keep doing it. She whispered yes. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. Everything outside was exactly the same as it had been 10 minutes ago, but inside this house, my entire life had just ended. I asked why she was telling me this now. She said she was telling me because she couldn't live with the secret anymore. She couldn't keep lying to me. I pointed out that she'd managed to keep lying to me for months now, until the blackmail. She didn't answer. I turned around to look at her. She was sitting on the edge of the couch, face in her hands, shoulders shaking. I walked back over to the couch, but didn't sit down. I asked how many times. She asked what I meant. I clarified. How many times had she slept with him? She said she didn't know exactly. Maybe 15 times. Maybe more. 15 times you made the choice to betray our marriage, I asked. 15 times you come home and kiss me hello and ask about my day while keeping this secret. She said she didn't know. She didn't know how it happened, which made me laugh with pain. I asked if she loved him. The question surprised both of us. I hadn't planned to ask it. She immediately said no. She said she loved me. She'd always loved me. This was just a mistake that got out of control. I asked, a mistake that happened 15 times. She didn't respond. I looked at her sitting there in her wrinkled scrubs, crying, waiting for me to tell her what came next. And I realized I had nothing to say. No anger, no forgiveness, no plan. Just emptiness. I stood up and walked toward our bedroom. She called after me, asking me not to leave, asking if we could talk about this, if we could figure out how to fix this. I stopped in the doorway and turned back to look at her. I asked what she thought we were going to fix. She'd been having an affair with my best friend for many months. In our house. While I was at work and only told me because he was blackmailing her. She started crying harder. She said she knew it was bad. She knew it was terrible. But she loved me. She loved our marriage. There had to be a way. I told her there wasn't. I went into the bedroom and closed the door. I lay down on our bed, still in my work clothes, and stared at the ceiling. The house was quiet. I could hear Rachel still sobbing in the living room. I picked up my phone and looked at it, thinking about calling someone. But who? Adam was the person I usually called when something big happened in my life. My parents lived in Arizona and wouldn't understand the situation. Rachel's mom would take her side automatically. I put the phone back down. I kept replaying the conversation, looking for clues I'd missed, trying to figure out when I should have known. The overtime shifts that weren't really overtime shifts. Adam stopped by during the day when I wasn't home. Rachel's new perfume, new underwear, and new gym membership. All of it made sense now. I thought about the videos Adam had taken. How long had he been planning this? Had he been planning it from the beginning, or had the blackmail idea come later? Was Rachel really a victim, or was that just what she told me to make herself look better? It didn't matter. Even if Adam had forced her into continuing the affair, she'd made the initial choice to sleep with him. She'd made that choice at least 15 times before he started threatening her. I thought about our wedding day. Adam was standing next to me, holding the rings, smiling while I promised to love and honor Rachel for the rest of my life. Had he been thinking about this even then? Had he wanted her from the beginning? I thought about all the dinners Rachel had cooked for him, all the times we'd invited him over for holidays because he didn't have family nearby, all the times I'd trusted him with my personal problems and my plans for the future. Around midnight, Rachel knocked on the bedroom door. She asked if she could come in. I said no. She asked me to please let her in, said she couldn't sleep, and we needed to talk about this. I said we talked about it. She said we needed to talk about what happens next. I said I knew what happened next. She was quiet for a minute, then asked what. I said I was filing for divorce. I heard her start crying again on the other side of the door. She asked me not to do that, asked if we could try counseling, if we could try to work through this. I said no. She asked why not, said people get through affairs all the time, that we could figure this out. I got up from the bed and opened the door. Rachel was standing in the hallway in her pajamas, eyes red from crying. I told her she didn't have an affair. She had a full-on relationship with my best friend while lying to my face every single day. She said she did love me. I said no, she didn't. She might think she did, but she didn't. People who love each other don't do what she did. She said people make mistakes. I told her this wasn't a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill or saying something hurtful when you're angry. This was a choice she made over and over and over again. She leaned against the wall, looking exhausted. She asked what about the blackmail, what about the videos. I said that was between her and Adam now. I wasn't getting involved. She asked if I wasn't going to help her. I asked, help her with what? Get back the videos of her cheating on me? Why would I do that? She said, because she was my wife. I said no. She was my wife. Now she was someone who used to be my wife. I went back into the bedroom and closed the door. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed thinking about practical things. How to file for divorce. Whether we'd have to sell the house. How to divide our bank accounts and everything. I thought about Adam and whether I'd ever confront him about what he'd done. I decided I wouldn't. There was nothing he could say that would change anything. No explanation that would make sense of betraying 8 years of friendship. I thought about the videos and whether he'd actually show them to people, or if that was just a threat to control Rachel. I decided I didn't care. Let him show them. Let everyone know what kind of people they both were. Mostly, I thought about how quiet the house felt. By the time the sun came up, I was sure about what I needed to do. Rachel was asleep on the couch when I got up at 6 a.m. She'd covered herself with the throw blanket from the back of the sofa, still wearing the same pajamas from the night before. I made coffee quietly, trying not to wake her up. I didn't want to have another conversation about trying to save our marriage. There was nothing left to save. I called my supervisor and told him I'd be late, that I had a family emergency. He said to take the day if I needed it. Then I called the divorce attorney. I'd found his name online at 5 a.m. while Rachel was sleeping. He's a family law specialist with good reviews and an office in downtown Portland. His receptionist said he could see me that afternoon at 2 p.m. Rachel woke up while I was getting dressed for work. She asked if I was going to work. I said I was going to meet with a lawyer first. Then, yes. She asked if we could please talk about this more before I did anything permanent. I looked at her. Her eyes were puffy from crying. I asked what she wanted to talk about. She said she wanted to explain how this happened. She wanted to tell me why she made the choices she made. I told her to explain it. She seemed surprised that I'd agreed. She said when I was working so much earlier in the year, she was lonely. Adam started coming around more just to check on her, he said, to make sure she was okay while I was working so much. I immediately told her that I began working more because she was working more shifts and hardly had my time. I asked her how she would feel if I were the one with another woman when she gave me excuses about working late. She was quiet. As I was about to walk away, she said it wasn't that simple, that she planned to tell me after the first time. But then she thought about how much it would hurt me, how it might end our marriage, and she convinced herself it was just a one-time thing, that it would never happen again. I said, but it did happen again. She said yes. She told him she wanted to stop, that she felt too guilty to continue. That's when he told her about the videos. I asked if these were videos he'd been taking without her knowledge. She was quiet for a moment, then said some of them she knew about. Some she didn't. I asked which ones she knew about. She said the first time. He asked if he could record them. He said it was just for him, that he'd never show anyone. She said yes because she thought it was just between them. I said either way, she continued sleeping with him. She said that because he was threatening to destroy both of our lives. I said her life was already destroyed. She just didn't want me to know about it. She started crying again and said she knew how this looked. She knew I thought she was a terrible person. I said I thought she made terrible choices. I didn't know if that made her a terrible person, but it made her someone I couldn't be married to. I stood up and grabbed my wallet and keys from the dresser. She asked where I was going. I said to meet with a lawyer, then to work. She asked when I'd be home. I said I didn't know. Maybe not tonight. She asked where I'd stay. I said I'd figure it out. I walked toward the bedroom door, then turned back to look at her. I told her I needed her to understand something. This wasn't about the blackmail. This wasn't about Adam threatening her. This was about her choosing to have an affair and only telling me because she couldn't handle the secret anymore. This was about her lying to me every single day while sleeping with my best friend. She said she knew. I asked if she did because she kept talking about the blackmail like that's what ruined our marriage. The blackmail didn't ruin our marriage. Her affair ruined our marriage. She nodded, still crying. I told her I loved her. I would have done anything for her. I worked 60-hour weeks to give her the life she wanted. I trusted her completely. And she threw it away for someone who was now using her. She said she knew. She was sorry. She was so sorry. I said I knew she was. But being sorry doesn't fix this. I left for work. The lawyer's office was in a high-rise downtown. He asked me to tell him what was going on. I told him everything. The affair, the blackmail, my decision to end the marriage. He took notes on a legal pad, asking questions about our assets, our timeline, and whether we had children. He asked if we'd been married 5 years. I confirmed we had. He asked about a prenup. I said no. He asked about joint bank accounts. I said yes. He asked if we owned a house together. I said we did. We bought it 3 years ago. Both our names were on the mortgage and the deed. He asked about other significant assets. Retirement accounts, investments. I said we had 401k accounts through our jobs. Mine was bigger. A savings account with thousands in it. 2 cars, both paid off. He made more notes. He asked if I'd talked to my wife about divorce yet. I said I told her last night that I was filing. She wanted to try counseling. He asked if I was interested in that. I said no. He asked why, saying that sometimes in cases involving infidelity, couples are able to work through the issues with professional help. I thought about how to answer that. I finally said it wasn't just a one-time mistake. It was an affair with my best friend in my house while I was at work. She only told me because he was blackmailing her to continue it. I didn't see how counseling fixes that level of betrayal. He nodded understandingly and asked what kind of divorce I was looking for. Collaborative, mediation, or litigation. I asked what the difference was. He explained that collaborative means my wife and I would work together with lawyers to reach an agreement outside of court. Mediation involved a neutral third party helping us negotiate. Litigation means we go to court and let a judge decide how to divide our assets and debts. I asked which was fastest. He said collaborative or mediation, if both parties were willing to cooperate. Litigation could take months or even years. I asked what if she didn't want to cooperate. He said, then we go to court. But most people prefer to avoid that if possible. It's expensive and emotionally draining. I told him I wanted to try the collaborative approach first, but to be prepared for litigation if Rachel wouldn't agree to reasonable terms. He asked what I considered reasonable. I said I wanted out of the marriage as quickly as possible. I was willing to take my share. I didn't want alimony, and I didn't want to pay alimony. I just wanted to be divorced. He said that sounded reasonable to him and asked about the blackmail situation with my friend. I asked what about it. He said my wife might want to pursue criminal charges and asked if I was supportive of that. I thought about it and said that was her decision. I wasn't going to help her or stand in her way. He asked what if the videos became public. I said that they would become public. I couldn't control what he did with them. He looked at me for a moment and said that was a pretty mature attitude given the circumstances. I said I just wanted to move on with my life. He explained the filing process, the paperwork I'd need to gather, and the timeline for serving divorce papers. Oregon is a no-fault divorce state, which means I didn't need to prove Rachel had cheated to get divorced. I just needed to state that we had irreconcilable differences. He said he could have the papers drawn up by Friday, and I could serve them myself or hire a process server. I said I'd serve them myself. We shook hands, and I left his office feeling lighter than I had in 24 hours. Not happy, but purposeful. Like I was finally doing something instead of just absorbing the damage. I went to work and told my supervisor I needed to take Friday off for personal reasons. He didn't ask questions. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to a hotel near the airport and checked in for 2 nights. I needed space to think without Rachel trying to convince me to change my mind. I called my parents from the hotel room. I'd been dreading this conversation, but they needed to know what was happening. I told my dad that Rachel had an affair and I was filing for divorce. There was a long pause. He said he was sorry and asked if I was okay. I said I was okay. I was handling it. He asked if the affair was with someone I personally know. I said Adam. Another pause. He asked if I met my best friend, Adam. I said yeah. I could hear him talking to my mom in the background, filling her in. Then my mom got on the phone. She said she was so sorry and asked if I wanted them to fly out. I said no. I was okay. I just wanted them to know what was happening. She asked if I talked to anyone, a counselor or therapist. I said I was talking to a lawyer. I didn't need a counselor. She said sometimes it helps to talk to someone neutral about these things. I said I didn't need to talk about it. I needed to get divorced and move on. She was quiet for a moment, then said okay, but if I changed my mind, there was no shame in trying to save my marriage if it was worth saving. I said it wasn't worth saving. After I hung up, I ordered room service and tried to watch TV, but I couldn't focus on anything. I kept thinking about things. Where I'd live after the divorce. Whether I'd stay in Portland or move somewhere else. I thought about whether I'd ever be able to trust someone completely again. Whether this would make me paranoid in future relationships. Whether I'd always be looking for signs of betrayal. I thought about Adam and what kind of person does this to their best friend. I'd known him for 8 years. We'd been roommates, traveled together, celebrated each other's successes, and supported each other through failures. I'd trusted him with everything, and he'd used all of that against me. I thought about Rachel, too, trying to understand how someone I'd lived with for 5 years could lie to my face so convincingly. How could she make love to me while carrying on a relationship with another man? I woke up the next morning feeling strangely calm. I drove home to get some clothes and documents I'd need for the lawyer. Rachel's car wasn't in the driveway. She was probably at work, or at least that's what I hoped. I didn't want another conversation about saving our marriage. But she was there, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, still in her pajamas. Her eyes were still red and swollen from crying. She looked up when I came in and asked where I'd been. I ignored her. She asked if we could talk. I said we'd talked enough. She said she'd been thinking all night about what I'd said, about how this was my choice and not just about the blackmail. She said she understood now that she'd destroyed our marriage and that sorry wasn't enough. I didn't respond. I went upstairs to pack a bag. She followed me and stood in the doorway of our bedroom, watching me put clothes in a duffel bag. She said she'd called in sick to work because she couldn't function. She'd been thinking about calling the police about Adam, about the videos. I said that was up to her. She asked if I'd support her if she pressed charges. I said I wouldn't help her or stand in her way, but I wouldn't be involved. She asked what that meant. I said it meant I wasn't going to testify on her behalf or against him. Whatever happened between them now was their business. She started crying again and said she didn't understand how I could be so cold about this. I stopped packing and looked at her. I said I wasn't being cold. I was protecting myself. She and Adam had made choices that destroyed my marriage and my friendship. Now they had to deal with the consequences of those choices without involving me. She said, but he was blackmailing her. I said, and you were cheating on me. Both things could be true. She was quiet for a moment, then asked what about the house. I said my lawyer would contact her about dividing our assets. She asked if I really wanted to sell the house. I said I didn't want to live there anymore. Too many memories. She said she couldn't afford the mortgage payments on her own. I said that wasn't my problem anymore. I finished packing and walked past her toward the stairs. She asked when I'd be back. I said I wouldn't. I'd send movers for my stuff. She followed me downstairs and asked where I'd live. I said I'd figured out. At the front door, she grabbed my arm and asked if there was really no way to fix this. If 5 years of marriage meant nothing. I looked at her hand on my arm, then at her face. For a second, I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with. The woman I'd proposed to on that hiking trail. The woman I'd promised to love and honor. But then I remembered her sitting on our couch 2 days ago, telling me about her affair with my best friend. How she'd only told me because she couldn't handle the secret anymore, not because she wanted to make things right. I said 5 years of marriage meant everything to me. That's why this hurt so much. I left. On Friday, I picked up the divorce papers from the lawyer's office. They were straightforward. A petition for dissolution of marriage citing irreconcilable differences. No mention of adultery or blackmail, just legal language about two people who couldn't make their marriage work. I drove to Rachel's hospital to serve them. I could have hired someone else to do it, but I wanted to handle it myself. The charge nurse at the front desk said Rachel was on her break. I found her in the cafeteria, sitting alone at a table by the window, picking at a salad. I sat down across from her and slid the envelope across the table. She looked at it, but didn't pick it up. She asked if those were divorce papers. I said they were. She asked if I'd really thought about this, if I was sure this was what I wanted. I said I'd never been more sure of anything. She picked up the envelope and held it in her hands without opening it. She said she talked to a lawyer, too. Then she started crying again and said she wished she could take it all back. I stood to leave when she asked what I was going to do next. I said I was going to start over, find a new place to live, focus on work, maybe travel somewhere I'd never been. She asked if I thought I'd ever forgive her. I said I didn't know. Maybe someday. But forgiveness didn't mean we could be married again. She nodded and opened the envelope. She looked at the papers for a long time without saying anything. Finally, she said she'd sign them. I said my lawyer would be in touch about the details. I turned to leave. She asked if she could hug me goodbye. I hesitated, then said okay. She stood up and put her arms around me. She whispered that she was sorry and that she'd always love me. Then I left. I never saw Adam. I never confronted him or asked him why he'd done what he did. I blocked his number, deleted him from social media, and threw away anything in my apartment that reminded me of our friendship. A few weeks later, the video leaked. It caused quite a buzz that made Rachel avoid socializing. I heard through mutual friends that Adam moved away. Los Angeles, someone said. Whether he left because of guilt or because Rachel had pressed charges or just because he wanted a fresh start, I didn't know and didn't care. Rachel signed the divorce papers without asking for anything more than her fair share of our assets. We sold the house and split the proceeds. She kept her car, I kept mine. We divided our savings account down the middle. The whole process took 4 months. 5 years after our wedding, we were officially divorced. She decided to move away and cut off most of the people we knew. Although she tried to keep up communication with me, I wasn't interested in having anything to do with her. I didn't know how her case with Adam was finally handled because that wasn't my problem anymore, but I knew it dragged on in court, with Adam claiming he never leaked it. I found an apartment in Northwest Portland, close enough to work that I could bike there in good weather. It was smaller than the house Rachel and I had shared. No memories, no associations, just empty space I could fill with whatever came next. I threw myself into work, took on bigger projects, longer hours, and started building the reputation I'd need if I ever wanted to start my own business. It kept me busy and gave me something to focus on besides the wreckage of my personal life. I went to therapy for a few months, mostly to talk through the trust issues I knew I'd carry into future relationships. The therapist was helpful in identifying patterns I'd need to watch out for, how my need to provide for people might make me ignore red flags, how my tendency to trust completely could leave me vulnerable to betrayal. But mostly, I just focused on rebuilding my life as a single person. I dated a little, nothing serious. I was honest with women about what I'd been through, which seemed to either scare them away or make them want to fix me. Neither response was particularly helpful. I'm more careful now about who I let into my life. I pay attention to inconsistencies in people's stories. I trust, but I verify. Some people might call that cynical. I call it realistic. I still believe in love. I still want to find someone to share my life with. But I know now that loving someone completely doesn't mean trusting them blindly. That being a good partner doesn't mean ignoring your instincts when something feels wrong. I learned that some betrayals really are unforgivable. Not because the person who betrayed you is evil, but because the foundation of trust is so completely destroyed that there's nothing left to rebuild on. But understanding why someone betrayed you doesn't mean you have to forgive them. And forgiving someone doesn't mean you have to stay married to them. The divorce was the right choice. Not because I wanted to punish Rachel, but because I needed to protect myself. I needed to choose self-respect over trying to save a marriage that had been built on lies for months. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who have proven they can't be trusted with your heart. It's been a while since that Tuesday evening when Rachel told me about the affair. I still think about it, sometimes as a lesson in the importance of choosing people who share your values. People who, when faced with loneliness or temptation or stress, make choices that protect their relationships rather than destroy them. If you're going through something similar, if someone you trusted has betrayed you in a way that feels unforgivable, know that it's okay to walk away. It's okay to choose yourself. It's okay to decide that some lines, once crossed, mark the end of a relationship. You don't owe anyone a second chance at destroying your peace of mind. You don't have to forgive someone just because they're sorry. You don't have to stay married to someone just because you promise to love them forever if they've proven they don't understand what love actually means. Trust your instincts. Protect your heart. Choose people who choose you back consistently and without conditions. And remember that endings, even painful ones, can also be beginnings.